Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of my podcast. When I decided I wanted to launch a podcast, I knew already that I wanted to do it both in video format as well as traditional podcast format. So you're probably going to start seeing this initially on YouTube, and later thereafter it'll start getting released on all the podcast networks as I get approved for those. But I thought long and hard about who my first guest would be. Because I wanted it to be something memorable, something that was important if it was going to be my first guest. And it didn't take me too long to figure out that I thought my first guests should be my parents. I'm very close with my parents, always have been. They're always there for me through a lot of things. And I just thought that their story of how they met and also how my dad made his way to America from Cuba was a really interesting story. So I thought that would be a great way to start my podcast. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you may have seen them in some of my past videos. We've done some trips together and things like that. But if you're new to my channel and you're new to my podcast, my father, Marcos Maya, and my mother, Linda Maya. So welcome, and thank you, Mom and Dad, for agreeing to do this. I guess, Dad, if you want to kind of start, telling the audience a little bit about, living in Cuba and kind of when that time came that y'all realized we need to get out of Cuba. So
okay, here we start. I have kept in good memory a lot of aspects of my life, and I can go back and remember the situation in Cuba when Fidel Castro won the revolution and took power on January 1, 1959. At that time, there was still a lot of turmoil in the country. They were trying to settle the new administration. We, the citizens, were trying to understand what was going on, how we were going to continue our lives under this new format of government. And so time started going by. There were a lot of situations still about Fidel Castro eliminating all the previous government elements. There were a lot of killings, a lot of situations that were very dangerous. At that time, I was 19, 20 years old. And so my father was about his business. He was a very incredible, and I give him, how could I say?
he was a hard worker and entrepreneur.
Yeah, he was an entrepreneur that was really just focusing on his life, in his business, etc., providing for my family. We were three brothers. I'm the oldest of the three. And so I have gone through finishing my high school in Havana. And I was more involved into finding deeper as to what this administration was all about. And in the discoveries, every now and then I talk to my parents, my brothers at home, and I try to let my father know that this was communism. Something that the country would not accept. And my father always kind of like shut me down by saying, no, you're wrong. Everything is going fine. Everybody's working. Businesses are going well. And so I said, Dad, this is communism. We cannot survive under this kind of government. We need to get out of the country as we can right now, before it's too late. He said, no. There's got to be more proof of that to convince me that, yes, we need to make that step. And so time continued going by until the day of the celebration of the revolution was the theme title of the revolution, which was the July 26th revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so on July 26th, first celebration, 1960, Fidel Castro wanted to have a big rally opening in Havana, a big plaza. Hundreds of thousands of people were gathering there, which they did. Started in the morning. Throughout the day, there were several speakers for the government. And of course, recalling the situation, Fidel Castro closed the rally and the speech by he himself talking to the people. My father and I were sitting in our living room watching television, watching the speech, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And towards the end, Fidel Castro said, I want to make a declaration. I want you all people to know that I'm a Marxist-Leninist since age 16, and I will always be until the day I die. And when he made that statement, my father and I both jumped. And we both got tears in our eyes. We were hugging each other. And my father was apologizing to me and kept saying, my son, you were right all along. I didn't want to listen to you, but this is the confirmation I was telling you about. Yes, we're definitely going to leave the country. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to our family's attorney, and we're going to see what it's going to take to make preparation to emigrate and go to USA.
Yeah.
And so it was that immediately paperwork was prepared, request for passports, etc. My father, as an entrepreneur, had his own business, not a large business, let's call it medium class business, mm-hmm. enough to provide for the family and just live normal life. And so it was that finding out that there were hundreds of thousands of applications already at the State Department to get the approval, etc. So
from there to how long did y'all have to wait before y'all officially left and started making your way out of the country?
Okay, there was an incident that helped us out to advance and made it out quicker at the time that we left.
Okay.
We actually left July 28, 1962.
So within about a week of the announcement?
No, the celebration was in 1960. July 26,
so 2 years.
1960. So it took a year and 2 days. 2 years, 2 days before we finally got the approval to get out of the country.
Okay, so when y'all left, y'all didn't come straight to the U.S., though. You, from what I recall, what you're telling me about, y'all went straight from there to Jamaica first.
At that time, it was easier to get the tickets for the airlines to go through Kingston, Jamaica, than go straight to Miami, Florida. There were 3 flights every day to Miami, and there was only 1 flight a day to go to Kingston. And so, through a family member maneuvers, mm-hmm. that was in the administration, unfortunately, on the only relative on my father's side. He was a communist for many, many years before.
Mm-hmm.
But the close relationship about family is family. We care for each other no matter what you believe or what I believe. So he kind of like had a high position in the government and was able to go to the State Department and request to move our application much, much more forward so we could get out faster and easier. And so it did. We were at home. This is an interesting point here. My father built a home from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
We were living basically comfortably. And one of the requirements by the government to let you out, you had to voluntarily
Forfeit all your property, right?
forfeit all your properties and belongings, etc., and give it to the government. And so it was back in 1960 when the attorneys handling the application to leave. The government has a committee, a group from the city. They come to your house and they take inventory of everything you own. And it's all recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And the statements are, if you leave the country and when you leave the country, we're going to come back to your house the day before you leave, and we're going to recount and check everything that is on this list.
To make sure that you didn't try to take anything in there.
Because you're not allowed to give this away to anybody, not even relatives. If anything is missing from this list, it will disqualify you, and then you will not leave the country. And so there was that my father had to give his business, the key to the house, all our belongings, money, jewelry, etc. We could not leave the country with anything. And so the way that they announced and confirmed that you were leaving, they would send a telegram, hand delivered to your door at your home. And so it was that night, July 27 at night, right after dark, motorcycle was coming down the street, came to our house, knocked on the door, and gave us on hand the telegram. They left, and the telegram indicated, you need to be at the international airport in Havana tomorrow morning. And of course, the time, whatever, 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. In the meanwhile, we were told that we could stay that night, the 27th, at the Hilton Hotel in Havana, just for overnight.
Okay.
And they will transfer us from the hotel to the airport. And so it happened. And we went to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Very emotional. Once you got into an area that was secluded, once everybody that was living in that particular flight, they locked all the doors, everything. There was a lot of glass around. Relatives and friends were outside saying goodbye to the people, etc. And that was a very critical, very touching moment that we went through as everybody else.
So from there, is that when y'all were flying straight to Kingston?
Yes. And so our flight was direct to Kingston, Jamaica. We're right up at the airport, pretty close to, let's say, noontime. We were received by an organization that was helping the immigrants from Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
We went for a place to stay, to this residence where an Englishman married to a Jamaican lady
Mm-hmm.
lived, and they had a little girl that was about 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And we were treated royally. These people were taking good care of us. It just so happened that through the stay, we had a few days to wait
Okay.
for our request to go from Kingston to USA, basically going to the port of entrance for the immigrants from Cuba, which was Miami, Florida. And so it just so happened that on August 6, 1962, Queen Anne, the Princess Anne from England,
Yeah.
came to Kingston, Jamaica to give the freedom to the government in Jamaica, releasing them from the government in England. We just happened to witness an incredible parade that happened to pass right by the house where we were staying. We were on the second floor balcony. We could see the carriage coming with all the colorful attires from England, etc., etc. I saw the the princess, and waving and saying goodbye, etc. So that was kind of like a memory that I have. I have a lot of more details, but anyway,
it's interesting that you got to experience that on.
I experienced
leaving.
that as it happened in history, and so anyway, 3 days later, we had gotten the approval, got the visa and the passport, etc., and we flew to Miami, Florida, where again an organization was waiting for us at the airport, pick us all up, etc. And at that time they say, well, we're going to take you to this hotel that we have pretty rearranged, where you're going to stay temporarily until we decide your future. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to live, etc. And so from there, this is something that is very interesting. We had, after we were at the hotel, the following morning, we were taken to representatives of the government in Florida,
Okay.
of the city, per se, Miami, and to have a meeting and question and answers, what we were going to do with our lives, etc. And I remember the representative telling us, look, we can provide you while you're staying here. We got warehouses set up to where you can go and pick up all, whatever clothes you want to take, shoes, all your necessities, etc. And if you would decide to stay in Miami, the government has made arrangements to provide you payment. Let's say where you will get, based on your father, your mother, and your 3 children, X amount of dollars so you can survive, right? So you can pay for...
To get started.
To get started. To which we all agreement. My father said, well, actually, we don't want to stay at this point in Miami. I have some relatives in New York. Mm-hmm. We want to go to New York, visit them, and get a better orientation as to where we should stay and where we should live, etc.
Okay.
So later that afternoon, we flew to New York. At this point, representatives from the organization again waited for us, helped us. But we also had a relative waiting. Mm-hmm. And They took us to a hotel where we were staying temporarily, et cetera, et cetera. So while we were living in New York, trying to decide our future, we realized that we didn't want to live in that kind of pace. It was too fast. It was too.
And you said there was a lot of crime too, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of crime in the area. We witnessed that being outside, and we decided that we needed to live in an area that would be a better settlement with more peace, etc. So the organization said, we had a final meeting with them. My father said, look, we don't want to live here where everything is given and provided. I said, we came to the country to find freedom.
Yep.
And to reestablish ourselves, our lives, and build it up from the ground again. But we don't need the handouts anymore. So they said, okay, if that's what you want to do, we will pay for your final trip to wherever you want to go. Where my mother only had one relative in USA.
Mm-hmm.
And it was her youngest sister, married to an American geologist that lived in Texas. And so they said, okay, we'll pay your way to go to Texas. So we left the following morning. We arrived at a little town in the middle of Texas called Ozona. O-Z as in zebra, O-N-A, Ozona.
What would be the next closest place to that?
El Paso, Texas
Okay.
was the closest point, where my aunt and uncle already had an apartment.
Okay.
My uncle worked for a company that constantly moved him, as being a geologist, moved them all over, basically in Texas, to whatever the next job would be, let's say in oil wells, etc.
Yeah.
And so they already had an apartment in El Paso. So luckily enough, my uncle drove us to El Paso. We met my aunt. At this point, she had only one son. And luckily enough, we found an apartment in the same complex, so we were close to each other for connection.
Now, real quick, we're talking about Alicia and Terry, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Was Melvin the oldest?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my namesake was my dad's cousin.
Yeah.
And so the firstborn that he's speaking of that was there when they arrived to Texas is who I'm actually named after.
Correct. You got that right. And so that's basically how we landed in USA. We stayed in El Paso, trying to find, find jobs. Needless to say, we needed to improve the language. We needed to pick up the English better. And so we stayed a couple of years. We got to El Paso, if my memory serves me right, September the 2nd, 1962. In the summer of 1965, we moved from El Paso to Midland, Texas.
Okay.
Because my aunt moved to Midland. My uncle wanted to make an arrangement with the company so he wouldn't have to continue traveling all over the place. And because his son was getting into an age that needed to start going to school.
Okay.
And my aunt, being the only relative of my mother, well, when she left El Paso, then my mother felt like she was sad and missing the family in Cuba, missing the rest of the family, missing her sister. And so we went to Midland, Texas.
Followed him over there, basically.
Right. And that's where I met my wife.
All right, Dad. So before we jump straight into like how you and Mom met, tell me a little bit about the property that y'all settled in at and were living at
It just so happened that in driving around the area on the north side of town, right by the outskirts of the city, we saw a sign on the lot front, home for rent, and so we kind of like pulled into the place, and uh, this person came out, this man, and told us about the home and how much it would cost to rent it, etc., etc. We told him who we were, etc., and he kind of liked us. And it just so happened that this was the sheriff in charge in Midland, Texas.
That's interesting.
Real nice man. He owned this property and he moved on to another location, so he made this home vacant for rent.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained to us, he said, by the way, and incidentally, this is a house, a ranch house, on 4 acres of land, all fenced nicely, and in the back, the house had stables to keep horses.
And that's kind of similar to the way you were living in Cuba too, right?
Yes.
So even though Cuba's, everybody knows it as an island and probably beautiful beaches, y'all were more in the country land, correct?
Well, we lived in the city.
Okay.
It is my mother's family that in another province of the island.
Uh-huh.
Like my grandparents, they had a huge ranch
Okay.
on thousands of acres of land, etc. No, we lived in the city.
Okay.
So anyway, it was nice. The sheriff said, well, look, by the way, there are 2 stables already rented. I have 2 tenants, and each one pays $7 each a month to keep their horses in there. And they come in every day after work. They feed them, give them water, walk them, etc. You don't have to worry about anything. Very nice people. They will pay you promptly. And that money you keep is going to be kind of like part of your income to pay the rent. And so there it was, that here we were moved into this nice home.
Mm-hmm.
And not too long after we were living there, we had a visitor. And here comes what came to be my wife, came to visit with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
They put on a Jeep in front of the house, and they both walked out, came into the porch, and that's how I met my wife, Linda. So she might tell you some more details about it.
Yes, we owned a horse, and it was on my mom's best friend property, but it was too far for us to go ride the horse, whereas where he was living was just across the street from our subdivision. He was on the outskirts, we were on the inskirts. So I went with my friend Connie, who was dating his brother at the time, to see the stables. And
His brother Alberto.
yes.
Okay.
And we drove up to the porch, and he was standing out there wondering who was out in his yard, I guess. And I saw him standing there in his red shirt and his beautiful eyes, and I started talking to him. And he showed me the property and where the horses go, and I went home to talk to my parents about it. And they said, no, let's just keep it out at Sheila's house, because they aren't charging us anything. So I said, okay. So I told my friend Connie to let him know. Well, I don't know what happened, but after that, it was close to July the 4th. And I got a phone call, and he said he was Marcos Maya, the man that was renting the horse stables out. And he said, I'd like to take you out. And so I said, well, let me talk to my parents. And they said, yeah, you can go out with him. So that's how we met. It was kind of unusual, but when people say, how did you meet? And I go, over a horse. So we dated for several months.
Where was the first date, though?
July the 4th.
July the 4th.
But where did y'all go?
We went to, it was a Dairy Queen.
Uh-huh.
And we already had people at the house eating and everything, but we went to Dairy Queen, and he asked me what I want, and I said, well, how about some French fries and a Coke? So we had that, and we came back to the house, and we thought we were going to get some homemade ice cream, but it got all eaten up while we were gone.
But if I remember correctly, didn't you say Dad, he didn't even have enough money to get anything himself, so he just
No,
got
he
you,
didn't.
he just got you fries and a drink, and he watched you eat and drink.
Yeah, he did, and I felt so guilty.
That's how poor we were.
Yeah, but we dated, and we started getting serious, and I was a senior in high school, and things just started occurring, and we decided to go ahead and get married on March the 3rd. My mother was kind of mingling and didn't want us to get married yet, so, but we felt that the love was there and strong, so we got married.
So March the 3rd, and y'all just had your 3 weeks ago,
1967.
your 55-year
Anniversary. Yes.
March 3rd, 1967.
Yeah.
Was the
Yeah,
date.
and I continued my senior year at high school,
Mm-hmm.
and we eventually moved here to Houston for him to go to St. Thomas College, and I found a job working here in Houston.
So there's a little interesting part of that, though, is that my dad was working with a company back in Odessa,
In Midland.
Midland. And he made arrangements to transfer with that company to Houston,
Yeah, they had a branch here in Houston.
but he couldn't come right away. So my mom came a few weeks ahead, right?
Yeah, about a month ahead. As soon as I graduated, I came down to Houston, and he had an aunt that lived here that had left Cuba a few years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed with that family, and I found a job, and he finally was able to come to Houston on my birthday, August the 12th. So we were communicating mainly by a letter every day.
By letters.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nowadays it would be a text message
yeah.
Right.
or social media.
And I looked forward to every day going to the mailbox and getting that letter from him.
So you came down, and then Dad came down,
Yeah,
and then Dad, you started going to college at St. Thomas.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that through a cousin of mine, that family moved from Cuba like the year before or so, and to Houston, Texas. And my cousin, who was close to me, just like brothers,
Mm-hmm.
found out that she knew that I wanted to continue my education. And through the Catholic Church, she found out that a priest that was very well known in Havana, that had a school for children, basically males,
Mm-hmm.
had come to Houston, Texas, and was staying at a Catholic church.
Okay.
And so she visited with him and mentioned as an introductory to the family, etc. In the conversation came up that I wanted to continue my education, but I was living up in Midland, Texas, and I wanted to know if there was any way that I could get some kind of help from the Catholic Church. And through this priest, he made a research. He found out about the University of St. Thomas in Houston,
So that's what brought you to Houston, was St.
Correct.
Thomas.
who was run, the business was run by priests, etc. And so that also helped me move to Houston so I would continue my education. That was the plan.
Yeah.
That's why Linda came ahead of me, found a job.
Get established a little bit.
Yeah, try to get established. 6 weeks later, on her birthday, then I came down with my mother and my brother.
Now your third brother.
Yeah, my third brother,
David.
And so we all came to Houston, and that's how we started our lives here. where we got established. So,
Now, that first place y'all lived in Houston, I remember y'all shown me that was the one that was off of Bell Street?
Well,
no,
actually,
that War Drive.
Wall Drive.
Off
War
of Wall.
Drive. That we looked for an area, some place to live, which obviously again we had to rent.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't be too far away from the University of St. Thomas.
Okay.
So we found this kind of like cozy, very nice apartment that was 7 blocks walking distance to the university. So
Now,
I
that
could
was
walk.
also convenient for Mom with her job, too, right?
No, at that time, I was working downtown for the telephone company.
Okay.
And I had to catch the bus every day to go to the telephone company. But later on, I decided the route was too much. We couldn't afford it. So I found a job at this company, American Optical Company, and I got a job there. And right around the corner from it was Bell Street. So we moved from the previous apartment to this little quadruplex.
Yeah, quadruplex.
Do y'all remember the address?
Yeah, 1221.
1220.
So for all the people that are in the Houston area, you're probably familiar with like West Gray and Studemont, and this would be about
And West Bell.
West Bell would be about 2 blocks off of West
Yeah.
Gray
Yeah.
and Studemont area. So, and then eventually y'all ended up moving into a different house across the street from that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the last time I took y'all to visit there, and it's been some years, was one of them gone or torn down and rebuilt?
Yes,
or
they rebuilt the quadruplex.
Okay,
It was taken down, but still
the house was
the house that we lived in, and we moved across the street because at that time I'd had our second child, Melissa, and we needed more room.
yeah.
So we rented the house across the street.
Okay, let's rewind a little bit because I
That
remember
was
Dad
the-
telling me a funny story about when Michelle was born, and he was still going to St. Thomas, and the nuns would help to take care of Michelle at the college or no
No.
Teachers.
The
teachers.
teachers. Yeah, needless to say, I took Spanish as part of my studies, where I could progress more into getting a degree, and the teachers got very well as very strong friends,
Yeah.
and they kind of liked me a lot, etc., etc. So our firstborn Michelle, as a baby, I was still going to the university. I recall,
And that was when Mom was downtown working, right?
so I had a class that I had to participate and give the class at the university.
Were you
while the teacher would sit in the back of the room.
Were you a teacher's assistant, a TA?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so happens that I told the teacher, I said, well, look, I don't have a particular babysitter for this day. What am I going to do? He said, no, don't worry. Bring her with you. That way we get to know her. And so I'll take care of her while you teach the class. And so there it was that particular day, I went to the classroom with Michelle in my arms, and of course all of the students and friends, etc., came over to see the baby.
Yep.
And while I was giving the class, the teacher, and I always remember the name of my teacher. This was the head of the department in Spanish.
Uh-huh.
Her name was, or is, I hope she's still alive, Rima Valbona. And she was in the back of the room with Michelle in her hands, in her arms, while I was teaching the class. And that was something unique that I will always cherish and remember about the school as I was going to St. Thomas.
Speaking of whether or not, the possibility of her still being alive, if she was a teacher, how much older do you think she was than you, approximately?
Quite a bit.
No. So
Like 5 years, 10 years?
So quite a bit. She could have been maybe 10 to 15 years older.
Because you're 82, so that would put her at 92 to 97 years old.
Yeah, she could be dead. Something that I'm going to research. I'm going to find out
Yep.
if she is or not. Maybe she's still alive.
We can try to find out.
Yes.
Maybe somebody listening or viewing, maybe a relative or a friend of that family, and tell us something in the comments or reach out.
Yeah, but I will try to find out, definitely.
So I didn't mean to rewind on y'all, but so now Melissa was born, and ultimately that's why you didn't get to finish
College.
going to St. Thomas, because you missed an exam, and it was one they just wouldn't allow a redo on. But
I could redo, but at that point I was overwhelmed with work because I had 2 jobs.
Yeah.
I was working at full-time jobs, 2 to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday at a factory, while I was going to the school in my classes in the morning from 7 to almost 1 o'clock, because I was also teaching lab in the Spanish department at the university every day.
Okay.
And so that was a very long schedule, basically the entire day, where I only had Saturdays and Sundays available. And so it just so happened that I took my finals that year, and there was only 1 exam left, and it happened to be biology. And I recall mentioning to the teacher the situation that my wife is pregnant, she's just about to have the baby, it could happen any time. I hope that I can come to this final exam and finish this semester, so I could focus now more into my family. Well, I remember the lady's name. Quite don't recall her first name, but her last name was Pinkerton, Miss Pinkerton. And I mentioned to her, I said, I need to have your phone number, because if for any reason something happens and I cannot make it the day of the exam, to make you aware of it. And wouldn't you know that the night before, here I am studying until late at night, middle of the night, for the test. And all of a sudden, my wife get the call.
Melissa was ready to come out.
Lisa was ready to come out. So go to the hospital, etc., etc. Pick up the phone from the hospital, call Miss Pinkerton, let her know, said, Miss Pinkerton, as we thought it could happen, here I am at the hospital, my wife is giving birth, I'm gonna miss the exam, as hard as I studied for that. She said, Marcos, you don't have nothing to worry about. We'll give you a remake.
Yeah.
All you need to do is keep in touch with me and the school, and we'll set a time convenient for you, and we'll let you have your test along, where you can go ahead and get it over with. And so it happened that I missed the test, but I was never able to go back. I had
busy
to call and let him know that, hey, the days kept going by. I got busier and busier and busier, and I was never able to take that final test at the university. And that gave me 3 complete full years. I had already completed 90 hours of studies.
So just a little shy.
I needed 30 hours to get my degree, and I had to let it go by.
Yeah.
And so that's how my studies ended at the University of St. Thomas.
So let's kind of, just to kind of slowly start winding this up, I did have a question that I thought of. I know that I was born at Heights Hospital. Were all of us born there?
Yes, all 4 of you kids were born at Heights Hospital, which is not in existence anymore today.
It's still a medical facility. And if again, for those of you that are local, on 19th Street in the Heights, where they have the little strip of little shops, and like Torchy's Tacos is over there, and
antique shops, lots of antique shops in the area.
They've built up a lot of new retail. There's a hospital facility there. It's probably about a 8 or 10 story building, maybe, give or take.
Something like that.
And it's some sort of a medical building. I don't know if it's a medical facility for the elderly or if it's just like a private hospital.
No,
that was the former Heights Hospital.
I think it's more for the elderly today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where me and all of my siblings were born.
Yep.
So, so how long were y'all off of like Bell Street? Like several years, or?
Yeah, a few years. Because
y'all eventually went out to the suburbs a little bit and then came back into the house.
Yeah, because we stayed out on Bell quite some time after Melissa was born.
Okay.
And we moved to to Ladbroke after Melissa was born. And so not long after that, Tito came along. Marcos Jr., I guess you could call him.
And that was at that Ladbroke?
Yeah, on Ladbroke.
Where was that?
It was out by
close
to Bush Airport, the Intercontinental Airport.
So that area of town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was close, street close to what is today Highway 69.
Okay.
About maybe 10 blocks from the highway.
Okay.
It was a brand new subdivision. It was one of those opportunities where we were able to select the land, go to the office, select all the materials.
So you built the house.
Yeah.
And build the house from the ground.
Do y'all remember that address?
12319 Ladbroke Lane.
We'll have to look that one up and see if it's still there.
It is still there.
It is still there.
Ladbroke or Brook?
Broke.
It's Ladbroke.
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 That sounds like a broken kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was still there when one time we went investigating and we drove by and saw the house and
Yeah,
it's
we
still
passed
there.
right in front of it.
I think I've never seen that one.
Ladbroke
No.
Lane, yeah.
Okay.
We lived there, I think, a couple of years. And then from there, we
Moved to where you lived.
I wanted to
To
be
Asheville.
closer to my job. And we found this area that was opening a brand new subdivision again.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily enough, it was one of those things that we had the opportunity to select the lot, again, go through the experience of going through the office, select all the materials for the house, et cetera, et cetera. And we built this second house, and we lived there 37 years, I think, totally. 38. We moved out of the house to the new house.
No, it was,
Yeah, because we moved to the new house that we live now.
but I think it's shorter than that because I was there for 43 years and I had the house for 11 or 12 years when y'all had moved out.
Yeah, because we
Bought the house in 1975.
we moved out of the house September 2008.
75 to like 09? Was that about it? 2009?
When we move out?
Yeah.
No, we moved into the new home September 29, 2008.
8, okay.
And so from 1975 to 2008,
We stayed there.
33 years. We lived there 33 years before we moved out.
Wow. Yeah, we had the house in the family for 43.
Mhm.
Yeah.
42.
Yeah.
Or 41.
Oh,
Because I'm 43, going to be about to be 44. So 41 years. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we can wrap it up there. If you guys want to know more, a little bit more detail, I did tell my dad we were on a time frame. We actually filmed this once before, and it ended up just getting way too long. So my goal was to try to keep this right at around an hour. But a lot of the details of when he was in El Paso, some of the stories of when he was in Jamaica, there's a lot of really interesting parts to those stories that we didn't get to go into. And so I think we'll probably find a way to kind of go over that stuff again, whether it'll be here on the podcast or if it might just be a separate segment on my YouTube. I haven't decided yet. But yeah, Mom, Dad, thank y'all for participating in this. I appreciate y'all
And
coming
maybe
and
we
doing
could
this.
give a little bit of my family
Yeah,
background.
so and I'm gonna do a real fast rundown on this, but whenever people say, what's my nationality, my heritage, or my ethnicity, I tell them I'm kind of a mutt, because my dad's father is originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and when he was a boy, they immigrated from Turkey they were heading to South America, stopped in Cuba
On a merchant ship.
on a merchant ship, yeah, and they decided that they liked
They
Cuba
pulled it
enough.
In the port of Havana.
Yeah, and so instead of continuing on the trip all the way to South America, they stayed in Cuba. So my dad, although he was born and raised in Cuba, he's half Turkish and half Cuban, and he was raised both Jewish and Catholic. So that's on my dad's side, and then on my mom's side, her mother is both British and Irish. My middle name, Malone, is my grandmother's maiden name, so that's the Irish side, her father's name, and then her mother was from England. And she and my grandfather on my mom's side met
in World War II.
At the Army War Base in England.
Yes.
And she was a Army nurse?
No, she actually was just there, and she worked in the underground plotting airplanes because where she lived, I don't need to go into that right now,
Yeah.
but that was an area that was bombed because it had the biggest searchlight that would find the planes.
Okay.
So,
And then your father was in the first official Air Force before it broke off to a separate division. It was still part of the Army, and he was stationed there, and he met my grandmother, and
he's from Texas.
he's from Texas originally, and we're several generations Texas American. So that's why I tell everybody I'm a mutt. I'm 5 different nationalities, ethnicities, however you want to look at it.
Yes, it's like, for instance, going back to me, you were mentioning that on my father's side, he was from Istanbul, which used to be called Constantinople.
Before it was Istanbul.
Now it's named Istanbul, from Turkey. And on my mother's side, her father's ancestors
Mm-hmm.
all came from Spain.
Okay, see, I didn't know that.
And that's how, from generation to generation to generation, is that my grandfather acquired the land
Mm-hmm.
that he inherited. And he married his wife, my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
was descendant from French. And you didn't mention that one. So
Yeah,
we
'cause I
have
didn't
also
know. I didn't
French
know.
blood.
Well, you don't know too much either. My father's mother ancestry is from Germany.
Now I'm learning even more. So quite a mix.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a mix. All right, well, let's wrap it up. Thank y'all again. I live in the center of Houston. I'm in downtown, like right in the middle of the city, and my parents are out in the suburbs in Cypress, so it's a good 30-minute haul each direction. So I appreciate y'all coming down here just to film this with me today, and for everything that y'all always do, not just for me, but all of your kids and the family and everybody. Y'all are always there for all of us, and we all love you and appreciate you very much for that. So if you guys want to see more from my parents, let me know in the comments. If it's on the podcast feeds, go shoot me a message on Twitter or however you want to reach me. And this is episode 1, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.